History's darkest repeats, the worst ways events have echoed through time. 1. Economic crises and depressions. Great Depression, 1929, and the financial crisis, 2008. Great Depression, the stock market crash of 1929 sent shockwaves through the global economy, plunging millions into poverty. Breadlines, shanty towns, and mass migrations became common as unemployment soared to 25%. The collapse led to significant reforms like the New Deal in the US, reshaping economic policy worldwide. Financial crisis of 2008, triggered by the bursting of the housing bubble and risky financial practices, this crisis led to the collapse of major financial institutions and required massive government bailouts. It revealed vulnerabilities in the global financial system and led to reforms like the Dodd-Frank Act. 2. Pandemics. The Black Death, 1347 to 1351, and the Spanish flu, 1918 to 1919. Black Death, this bubonic plague swept through Europe, killing an estimated 75 to 200 million people, decimating the population by up to 60%. It fundamentally altered the course of European history, leading to economic and social upheavals and significantly reducing the labor force. Spanish flu, this H1N1 influenza virus infected 1/3 of the world's population and killed approximately 50 million people, more than the death toll of World War I. It disproportionately affected young adults and had lasting impacts on public health policies. 3. Totalitarian Regimes and Genocide. Nazi Germany, 1933 to 1945, and the Rwandan Genocide, 1994. Nazi Germany, under Hitler's dictatorship, the regime orchestrated the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews, alongside millions of others, including Romani people, disabled individuals, and political dissidents. The Holocaust remains one of history's most horrific genocides. Rwandan Genocide, in just 100 days, around 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were brutally murdered by Hutu extremists. This atrocity highlighted the catastrophic consequences of ethnic tensions and the international community's failure to intervene timely. 4. Military conflicts and failures. Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, and the Soviet-Afghan War, 1979 to 1989. Vietnam War, a conflict deeply embedded in the Cold War context, where the US sought to contain communism. The war led to the deaths of over 3 million people, significant anti-war movements, and the eventual withdrawal of US forces, marking a significant foreign policy failure. Soviet-Afghan War, often termed the Soviet Union's Vietnam, this decade-long conflict saw the USSR attempting to prop up a communist government in Afghanistan. The war drained Soviet resources, demoralized its military, and contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union. 5. Colonialism and imperialism. Scramble for Africa, 1881 to 1914, and neocolonialism in the 20th century. Scramble for Africa, European powers divided and colonized nearly all of Africa, driven by greed for resources and strategic advantage. This colonization led to the exploitation of African people, the carving up of ethnic groups, and long-term socio-political issues. Neocolonialism. Post-independence, many former colonies faced new forms of control through economic pressure, political influence, and military intervention by former colonial powers and new global powers, perpetuating inequality and instability. 6. Ethnic cleansing and forced migrations. Trail of Tears, 1830s, and the Yugoslav Wars, 1990s. Trail of Tears, the forced relocation of Native American tribes, including the Cherokee, from their ancestral lands to designated Indian territory, resulting in thousands of deaths due to harsh conditions, disease, and starvation. Yugoslav Wars. Following the breakup of Yugoslavia, ethnic tensions erupted into brutal conflicts, particularly in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where ethnic cleansing campaigns led to widespread atrocities and displacement. 7. Religious persecution. Spanish Inquisition, 1478 to 1834, and the persecution of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, 2016-present. Spanish Inquisition, established to root out heresy, it led to the torture, forced conversion, and execution of thousands, particularly Jews and Muslims. The Inquisition fostered a climate of fear and repression in Spain. Rohingya crisis. The Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar faces severe persecution, including violence, mass displacement, and denial of citizenship, leading to accusations of ethnic cleansing and genocide by the international community. 8. Civil wars and internal conflict. English Civil War, 1642–1651, and the Syrian Civil War, 2011–present. English Civil War, a battle over political power and religious freedom between parliamentarians and royalists. It led to significant changes in the British political system, including the temporary overthrow of the monarchy. Syrian Civil War, what began as peaceful protests against President Bashar al-Assad's regime turned into a brutal conflict involving multiple factions and international interventions, causing a humanitarian disaster and reshaping Middle Eastern geopolitics. 9. Political corruption and scandal. Watergate scandal, 1972–1974, and the Petrobras scandal in Brazil, 2014–present. Watergate. This scandal exposed the extent of political corruption in the U.S., involving illegal activities by Nixon's administration to cover up their involvement in the break-in at the DNC headquarters. It led to Nixon's resignation, highlighting the importance of checks and balances in government. Petrobras scandal, a vast corruption scheme involving Brazil's state oil company, Petrobras, where politicians and executives were implicated in bribery and embezzlement, causing political and economic turmoil and leading to widespread public protests. 10. Expansionist aggression. Napoleonic Wars, 1803–1815, and the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, 2022–present. Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon Bonaparte's ambitious expansion across Europe led to extensive warfare, reshaping the continent's political landscape and causing millions of deaths. His ultimate defeat at Waterloo ended his empire but left a lasting legacy. Invasion of Ukraine. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the subsequent full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 aimed at reclaiming influence over former Soviet territories, resulting in significant geopolitical tension, international sanctions, and a humanitarian crisis.